What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fluffhammer. This week I've been painting the Lady of Vines from the Sylvaneth. This is a recent release, about 2 weeks ago now, come out. It's an absolutely stunning model. Very difficult to paint and very difficult to photograph as well. All of these extra bits make it hard to focus. So some of the pictures and stuff aren't in great focus. But anyway, let's get into it. I've been using a lot of contrast paints on this to try and speed up the process. It did take quite a long time, almost in this for about 8 hours in the end. It was a slow going process, a marathon more than a sprint. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the finished product, and let's get into how I did it. Okay, so let's get into this. So we have started with a primer of Ghoul Grey from Colourforge. The other option for this would be to use the Citadel contrast undercoat. Is either Grey Seer or Wraithbone. This is the more grey palette where I've gone for, so that would be Grey Seer if you wanted to follow directly along. We're starting off with Wyldwood contrast straight out of the pot, and we're just going to cover that all over all of the wood areas, trying to leave as many of the leaves and stuff as we can so we can use contrast on those parts as well. Next up are these two little logs on the base. Now, mostly these won't be too interesting for most people because they don't come as part of the model. They're just some 3D printed parts that I stuck on extra. I didn't want him standing on top of the Plaguebearer, so I swapped it out for a tree stump and just used a bit of green stuff. But here I'm just showing where I'm dipping between Snakebite Leather contrast and Wyldwood contrast, and just basically wet blending the two together. As you can see on the left hand log there, it's just making a nice smooth blend between the two. So what we're going to do after that is go into Gorthor Brown, and we're going to be using that for our highlights. So the Wyldwood is quite dark, and it's actually a really nice contrast paint. It's one of my favourites that I've used, and it leaves lots of areas to highlight on this model, and this was a very slow process. Next up, we're going to be highlighting all of the wood areas with Baneblade Brown, and again, you're just looking to do a slightly finer highlight than the previous stage. Leave a little bit of the Gorthor Brown showing, and obviously the Wyldwood still in the darkest of the recesses, as you can see here. For the next stage, we will be going into Karak Stone, again from Citadel, and this is the same situation again. Just try and do your finest highlight now. So this is going to be a nice fine line, and just get it as fine as you can, nice tip on your brush, and pick out the highest points. So as you can see, I'm concentrating more on the centre of the, I was going to say log, off branches, arms, whatever they are. Yeah, just trying to concentrate on the centre points to create my sharpest highlights. And then I'm going to be using Palid Witch Flesh, and this is going to be almost like a dot, or just the thinnest, tiniest little lines on the edges, just to give it a little bit of extended contrast. So next up is the Leaf Cloak. I have started with a coat all over of Plaguebearer and let that dry, and now I'm going to be going in 2 parts Plaguebearer to 1 part Creed Camo, and I'm planning to basically leave the bottom kind of 10 to 15% of the cloak as just Plaguebearer, and then I'm going to be adding the Plaguebearer and Creed Camo mix from like the bottom half upwards towards the top. Now, while the contrast paint's on the cloak dry, I'm going to be going into Ironrach skin, again from Citadel, and I'm going to now be base coating this over all of the parts that I want to be like the ethereal glowy effect. And so that is going to include the entire spear, the handle of the spear, the headdress thing, and also the little spite or pixie thing that's on the upper right hand branch, which is also going to be a kind of glowy spirit effect. To create the glowy spirit effect, I'm then going to use the Aethermatic blue 50-50 with contrast medium. I'm going to wash that all over the areas that we've just base coated with the Deepkin flesh. Also, I forgot to pick out these little runes in her thigh armour plates, so I'm just picking them out with a Deepkin flesh, and then I will wash them with the same Aethermatic blue mix. So now the cloak has dried, we are going to be going in with the next layer, which is Creed Camo again with Plaguebearer again, but we're going to be aiming to go slightly higher up than we did the previous time. So we probably left the bottom 10%, now we're leaving the bottom 25%, 30%. So we're creating a gradient basically as to where the cloak is darkest at the top, and then slowly fades out into kind of more dead looking leaves at the bottom. As you can see, the Plaguebearer's got like an almost dead leaf kind of yellow look to it, whereas where it would be sprouting out of, I'd like to go with a much fresher looking green. Then we're going to be going in with Militarum green contrast paint, and I'm going to be using this to pick out all of the leaves. I don't know, somewhere I've missed the vines off, I'm very sorry. Basically, I've gone halfway up the vines on the outside with the Creed Camo and Plaguebearer Flesh 50-50 mix, and I've gone about halfway up the vines, as you can see on these top bits here. Next up, we're going to be using Elysian green to highlight all the edges of the leaves. And after that, a final highlight of Ogryn Camo on the leaves. So these are quite dull in regards of a colour palette. You could have gone with something more like Warpstone Glow and Moot Green if you want really bright ones, but I'm kind of going with more natural tones for my Sylvaneth. Next up, I'll be using Loren Forest to pick out all of the vines on the chest and torso areas. There is quite a lot of these here. This was again a bit of a slow process, just picking them out. There's a lot around the hip areas as well, so I'm just going to go around neatly with that and base coat all of them. And then to tie it in with the leaves, we're going to be using the same highlight combo of Elysian green followed by a final highlight of Ogryn Camo on all of these areas. Next up, we're going to be using Retributor armour on all of the gold. So this is going to be the two shoulder panels. I've chosen to do the head, like the top of the head, there's a helmet plate. I've decided to do that all in solid gold. In some of the artwork it's done as like a gloss black, but I've decided to just do it all gold. And then we're going to be shading all of the gold details with Reikland Fleshshade. I normally use a gloss for this, but I've decided to go with just the standard Reikland Fleshshade because I want it to be more of an antique kind of gold. Next we're going to be using Warp Lightning to pick out the eye, and then we're going to be using a diluted glaze of Warp Lightning to give it almost a glowy effect to the eye. And then we'll highlight the eye with Moot Green. The next stage we'll be using Deepkin Flesh to highlight all of the areas that we use the Aethermatic blue on to create this kind of ghostly glowing effect. As you can see, I'm just using a nice 00 brush and picking out the sharpest edges to highlight here. Again, slow and steady process, just working your way around the spear and the headrest and anything else that you want to be that kind of glowy blue effect. Then we're going to be going in with bold titanium white from Pro Acryl, but this is any white really, any white of your preference, doesn't have to be the Pro Acryl. And we're going to be using that to do just some dot highlights. So I'm going to pick the kind of brightest spots and points where like 2 or 3 highlight points meet, or anywhere that I really think could look cool with a nice bright white dot highlight. Next up is going to be a highlight of Liberator Gold from Citadel. When I use all of the Citadel layer paints, they are always diluted 50-50 with water, so if you don't hear me say about dilution, the contrast paints I will specifically say if I've diluted them with medium, but for layer paints, just assume it's straight up 50-50 with water. So there's got a lot of ridges and stuff on these plates, so it's just getting a nice angle where you can use the edge of your brush to pick out the highlight points as you go along. And then we're going to go into Stormhost Silver from Citadel and just do some really tiny, again, just dot highlights where you've got these nice ridges where they've got top points where the largest areas of highlight meet. I'm just going to do tiny little silver dots and on the corners and the high points in like the centre of the pads and stuff. Sorry about a few focusing issues there. Next up, the armour panel on the stomach area, the vines hanging down and the helmet all have a tiny little gemstone. So we're going to start out by picking that out with black. Any black of your choice is fine. I have gone with Pro Acryl Coal Black. And then after that, we're going to be going into AK Black Red. And we're going to be using this as a highlight. And I'm basically planning to leave the top left corner of the gem black and paint the other 3/4 with the black red from AK. Then into one of my favourite colours, which is Bold Pyrole Red by Pro Acryl. And again, we're looking to highlight the black red, leaving a little bit in the gaps. And then a final highlight around the edge of the gem with Fire Dragon Bright from Citadel. And after we've picked that out as neatly as possible, I'm going to be going into white again. I'm using Bold Titanium White, but you can use any brand of your choice. And we're going to be picking just a little dot or two, whatever you think looks cool here. Some people do a thin little line down the edge. Some people use a double dot on these more kind of teardrop shaped gems. And that completes our model. So I gave it all a final coat of AK Ultramatte through the airbrush, and then I picked out the gemstones with AK Gloss Varnish. And this is the end result. So I hope you like the look of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I tried to keep this one a bit more kind of quick, rapid fire, rather than spending ages just looking at the same kind of bits over and over again. So I hope you like the new style of editing. Please don't forget to subscribe, that really helps me out. Leave a comment down below if there's anything you think I could improve, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks everyone, take care, bye bye. This episode of Fluff Hammer is sponsored by Black Tower Games, an exciting new game store located just outside of Norwich City Centre. They stock a wide range of board games, card games such as Magic of the Gathering, as well as a huge range of tabletop games like Star Wars Legion and of course Warhammer. They also have a massive range of acrylic paints from Citadel and brands like Vallejo as well. The web store is currently not active, but it will be up soon, so keep an eye out. They'll have 20% off all new releases for Games Workshop. Cheers guys.